Hi everyone, welcome back to another Stitches and Scribbles video. My name is Erin, and today I am going to be listening to all of Taylor Swift's albums for the first time. I realized that because of my busy work schedule that I had previously, I hadn't listened to any new to me music since like college. And I was interested in trying some new things, and one of the things that kept catching my eye was the new Taylor Swift albums, specifically Folklore and Evermore, I think they're called. But I kept telling myself that I didn't want to listen to the new albums until I had experienced her older work first. So I decided, since now this is what I do, that I might as well make it into a video. So I have created a Taylor Swift inspired project where each album gets its own color, and we're going to be making a beautiful rectangular striping shawl today. I'm going to do my setup rows first. So I am starting off with True Blue yarn from Lion Brand in the color Aqua, which is this one. And this is going to represent her first album, which I believe is just called Taylor Swift. Now I have to look at it and double check. Yeah, her first album is just called Taylor Swift, but I picked the aqua color because, I don't know if you will be able to see that. On the album, she has that bright blue water behind her, so I picked a yarn that was the closest to that color that I could match. So I'm going to do my setup, explain kind of what my stitch pattern is, and then go ahead and start listening. Alright, I have done the foundation row for my project. I chained 75 stitches and then did one row of linen stitch, which is the stitch I'm planning on using for this project. If you haven't worked linen stitch before, it's alternating chain one and single crochet, and you do your single crochets in the chain one space of the previous row, and that gives it kind of a woven look. This is actually the same stitch that I used for my temperature blanket. And when you do it with a fairly big hook size compared to the yarn, it creates a really drapey fabric. I am using a 5mm hook for this yarn versus the recommended one for the yarn is a 4mm. So if you go up in hook size, it increases the drapiness or like flexibility of the fabric as you work. It also gives you more holes in your work, so it looks more like lace. I'm all set to get started, so I'm going to start listening. I think after each album I'll give you an update on what the project looks like, as well as my favorite song from the album. I will warn you all, I am not a country fan, so these early albums are the ones that I'm probably the most hesitant to listen to, but we're gonna give it a try and see how it goes. Alright, I just finished listening to the first album, and this is how far I got in my shawl. I think I want each stripe to be a little bit wider, so I'm probably going to keep going with this color before I start listening to the second album, which I think is Fearless? Question mark? I don't know. I'll find out in a minute. Thoughts about first album. Still not a country fan, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was a little bit more on the, I guess, pop side of country. I don't know a lot about country music, so somebody correct me in the comments if that's incorrect. I think my favorite song on the album was A Place in This World, mostly because I think that, like, if teenager me had been listening to this album, that's the song that I would have picked out as my favorite. Overall, not bad. If this was on in the background, I wouldn't hate it, but it's definitely not something that I would pick to listen to for myself. I did think it was interesting that there were only a couple songs on the whole album that did not deal with relationships directly, and I think Place in This World was one of them. So I'm kind of wondering if that's a trend in some of her other earlier albums, because I know the later ones it's less of an impact on her music. So I'm going to listen to something else for a while and keep going on this color, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm ready to transition to the next color. Hello again, we're back with our next color, ready to start listening to the album Fearless. I am kind of changing a little bit of how I originally planned to do these. It turns out making the stripes the length I want is taking longer than I thought, so I will have to take breaks in between listening to albums to get the stripes to the right length. I also ended up having to redo most of my blue stripe yesterday because somewhere towards the beginning I skipped a stitch, so I had to go all the way back and frog it and start again. But we're ready to go again now. The color that I chose for Fearless is one of the True Blue Sparkle yarns in the color Sugar Cookie. So it's a light beige with some like holographic glittery thread running through it. And I also figured out my method for switching colors because I didn't really want a harsh line in between my different colors, since this is going to be like pretty dramatic color shifts from color to color for what I chose. So I decided to kind of fade in the colors with the linen stitch. If you do just one row of a color surrounded by the same color, it ends up looking like dots. So I did a row of dots in my new color, did 2 more rows of the old color, 2 rows of the new color, 1 row of the old color, and then kept going so that I get kind of that blended effect. So I'm going to start listening to Fearless, which I believe is still a country album, and I'll let you know my thoughts and show you the stripe at the end. Alright, I'm back again. I just finished listening to Fearless. I had to do it in a couple installments because I ended up having to run a couple errands today that I wasn't planning on, but I did finish the crochet section for Fearless as well as finished listening to the album. I liked this one better than the first album. Still definitely like very much of a country feel, but a little bit more into the pop side. I think my favorite song on the album was a tie between White Horse and You Belong With Me, but I think that's just because You Belong With Me I remember from high school, and it was the only song on the album that I recognized, other than Love Story I think I recognized too because it was trending on TikTok for a while. But I finished the stripe for Fearless. I forgot to explain why I chose the sugar cookie color. I noticed that for the original album cover for Fearless, it's very like glam looking, but still pretty neutral, so I knew I wanted a neutral color. And then I saw the Taylor's version cover for Fearless is also very neutral, but not quite as like bright and gold toned. It's more like beige. So that's why I went with the like sparkly sugar cookie. I am planning on listening to the Taylor's version of Fearless, because I think, is that the only Taylor's version that's out now? Yeah, I think that's the only Taylor's version that is out currently. I'll probably finish listening to that one when I'm like doing the finishing touches on the shawl, but I didn't want to, I wanted to listen to all the albums in chronological order of when they came out. So I'll listen to Taylor's version of that album when I am doing the finishing touches. So now I am ready to start Speak Now. For Speak Now, I am using True Sparkle in the color Plum. It's a very like pink toned purple with that same sparkle running through it. I have already done my transition rows, so you can see those little dots. Again, this shawl is getting very long very fast, so it'll definitely be one of those shawls that can also be worn as a scarf, and I'm really excited about that. I think it'll be nice and cozy because it like scrunches up, so you could definitely like wear this as a scarf, and it's super soft. So I'm going to go ahead and start listening, and I'll remember to film as I'm crocheting this time. Hello again! Yes, I'm in a new location in my apartment. I decided to change it up, and it's also now day 3 of this project, which is why I have another different shirt on. I finished my stripe for Speak Now. I chose that purple color because of the purple dress that she's wearing on the cover, and you can see I've already transitioned into my next color for the album, red, which is True in the color Scarlet. So it looks like that. Matches my nail polish really well right now. For the album Speak Now, there's that purple dress to match the yarn color. I think, let me look at the song list again. My favorite songs on this album were, I liked the title song Speak Now for sure, and I liked the song Mean mostly because it made me kind of laugh. Taylor got really salty in this album. She is definitely over it. At least that was the note that I was getting through this one. It seemed a lot more raw than the first 2 albums. She seemed to be speaking her mind a little bit more. I don't know if that was intentional or not. But we're going to go ahead and start listening to Red. Alright, we are back again. It's another different day. I had a really busy weekend, so I'm hoping that I can get the last 5 albums I have to listen to done in the next 2 days so I can get this video uploaded on time. I did finish my stripe for Red, which I'll show you in a minute, but I wanted to tell you my favorites first. I had 2 favorites on this album. One of them was I Knew You Were Trouble, which I think that one stuck out in my brain because I actually analyzed it for an English class in college on like a super weird day. I don't remember what the analysis was or like why we picked that song to talk about, but I do remember going through all the lyrics and like analyzing the music video for it. So I think because I had that like strong association in my brain, also I just liked the variety in tones in that song. It kind of like jumps back and forth between 2 different moods, which I really liked. I also liked the song Red. I thought that the like use of all the different colors was very creative. My husband told me that this is the first album she put out that is not country or like wasn't classified as country, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I still felt like there were a couple songs on this album that had strong country influence, even though they weren't actual country songs. Some of the guitar licks that she used and some of the like more twangy vocals were still present. So I think that even if this one wasn't specifically country, it still had some country influence to it, if that makes sense. But anyway, ready to start 1989. I noticed that I'm going to start and stop for a second. I noticed that the cover art for 1989 is, ooh, you won't be able to see that at all, will you? Oh well. The cover art for 1989 is very neutral toned, so I picked a very neutral color to go with it. Let's take a look. I picked Trubu, the like plain Trubu in the color silver for this album, so it is a very plain gray. It's still a little bit shiny because all of the Trubu yarns are, and I have blended it in with the color for Red so that we can get started with listening. All right, I finished listening to 1989 and finished the stripe on the shawl. Favorites for this album, I really liked Wildest Dreams, which just taught me how many songs I recognize only 15 seconds of, because I have seen that song or heard that song on TikTok a million times. Had no idea that it was by Taylor Swift, but really liked it. Shake It Off reminds me a lot of college parties and hanging out with friends because that was played a lot during that time frame. Overall, I really liked the album. I'm finding that each album I'm liking better and better than the previous one. So far 1989 is my favorite, but I know that Reputation is the one that I'm really excited to listen to because at least when it came out, it was marketed as being so different from her previous albums. So I'm really excited to listen to that one, and I'll go ahead and show you the color for this album. So the Trubu yarn doesn't come in black. I think if I was using a different yarn for this project, I probably would have gone with a solid black. Instead, I went with the color Slate, which is the regular Trubu. It's not a sparkle yarn, and it's a really deep charcoal gray, which I think will look really nice paired with all the other shades that are in this project. Lost my hook. I'm just trying to find it. Find the loop. There we go. So here's what those transition rows look like up against the gray from 1989. So let's go ahead and listen. Alright, we had a location change again trying to like move around my apartment and make sure I'm not like sitting in one place for too long. So if I have a really long crochet project, I get up, take breaks, move around, like reset everything. But I did finish my Stripe for Reputation. My favorite songs on that album were, I'm looking at the list because I don't remember the titles. I really liked This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things, and I think Don't Blame Me was my other favorite one on this album. So far, just like the last one, this album is absolutely my favorite. It's probably the closest stylistically to what I typically listen to, which was really interesting. It's also drastically different from all the other ones. Like, there was a smooth transition from country to pop with the first, what number are we on? The first 5 albums. But this one took a very dark turn. So I didn't like look up Taylor Swift's history before going into this, but something happened right around this album, right around when this album came out, because it is very different, but was really interesting to listen to. I do remember this one coming out as well because it came out right around when I started teaching, and I had students who were really into this album, so I do remember when this one came out as well. We're gonna go ahead and start Lover. So I originally picked this True Sparkle for this one, which is in the color Star, but when I ordered it online, I thought it was blue, and it's definitely silver. It's actually the same base as the plain True in the color silver. It just has that sparkle thread in it. So I actually ran back to Joann's yesterday and got a different color because Lover has the really pretty pastel background. I decided to go with this True Sparkle in the color Blush. So it's a light pastel pink, which matches the cover art for that album. It's the like light pink and blue clouds. So let's give this one a listen. Alright, we finished listening to Lover. Favorite songs on this album. I really liked The Archer. I also really liked the album title song Lover. This album was not what I was expecting. I think I was expecting more like lighthearted stuff, and it definitely had that sound to it, but it was dealing with a lot of like similar topics to Reputation, but kind of like masked it. And it seemed like this was an album that talked a lot about relationships again, but more about like getting over them. But there were also some that like definitely showed new things. I also really like the song Paper Rings. I forgot about that one. I think that one was actually my favorite. So we are on to the 2 newest albums from Taylor Swift. The first one being Folklore. And Folklore has an almost, over here, all white album cover with those trees. I also noticed it's the first one where like Taylor herself is like really, really small on it. I decided to go with a plain white for this one, so it is the regular Trubu just in the color white. So let's get started and give this a listen. Hello again, brand new day. I finished listening to Folklore this morning. I had to split it in half because it got kind of late last night while I was filming. Overall favorites from this album, I'm just looking at the list. I really liked Cardigan, which I know that like the Folklore cardigan is a thing that people were trying to recreate, and that is part of why I chose Taylor Swift for this video. It's because I saw how cool that cardigan was. I also really liked Epiphany. Overall, this album felt very, like, meditative to me. Like, Taylor has a lot of very similar themes throughout all of her albums. There's a lot of, like, relationship stuff in them, but this one felt more like she was at peace with stuff, if that makes sense. It was very, like, relaxing to listen to, and I really liked this style. I don't think it's, like, the type of music I'd play for a road trip, if that makes sense. It's more like inside on a rainy day with a cup of tea kind of mood, but I did really enjoy it. For Evermore, I had kind of the same issue that I did with Lover, where because I ordered the yarn online, I couldn't see the exact colors. So originally for Evermore, I had Trubu in the color tan, but it's the same base as the Sugar Cookie Trubu Sparkle that I used for one of the other stripes, so I ended up changing the color. And I don't know if Trubu comes in like shades of orange and brown, but my Joann's didn't have any of those shades. They seem to only have like light pastels and cool colors for their Trubu collection. So I ended up choosing from the Nubu line instead. This is the color Mocha. It's a very similar texture to the other ones. Trubu is made with bamboo, and this one is made with lyocell, which I believe is just a different plant fiber. It feels similar enough that you could use them for the same project, although usually I would recommend using the same yarn for the whole thing, but because these are so similar, it ended up working. And I thought like kind of the neutral darker brown color really fit with the cover of Evermore. I originally wanted to get one that was like an orange or a burgundy to match her plaid shirt that she's wearing, but I liked the brown just as much, and that kind of gave me another neutral to wrap up the project. So I'm going to go ahead and listen to the album, finish my final stripe, and then come back and tell you my thoughts. Alright, I have finished listening to Evermore. My favorite songs on this album were absolutely No Body, No Crime. I also got a little bit of the country vibe coming back in with that one and a couple others. And I also, now I'm forgetting which one it was. Oh, I also really liked Ivy. This album gave me a lot of the same vibes as Folklore, of it's more of like a rainy day, peaceful listening type album, but it had a little bit more of an edge to it, which I liked, so I think I'm going to have trouble picking a favorite at the end. I finished my final stripe. I'm going to listen to the the Taylor's version of Fearless while I sew in all of my yarn ends. This ended up a lot longer than I thought it was originally going to be, so I don't know yet if I'm going to put fringe on it. I might just weave in the ends and call it done. So I'll show you the finished product once I finish sewing in all of those yarn ends. Alright, here is the finished project. It ended up being more of a scarf than a shawl because I made it too narrow with the number of stitches I had across, and it ended up super long, as you can tell. But I really like how it turned out. It's kind of a funky looking piece with all the different stripes, and I love the more subtle changes instead of just a harsh color change. I like how the little dots turned out with the stitches. Overall, as far as listening to Taylor Swift, I think my favorite albums fall into two categories. One, like road trip upbeat albums. I think, not that either of these are super upbeat per se, but I really liked Reputation and Lover as far as more like music that you'd want to sing along to and kind of experience that way. But I really liked the vibe of Folklore and Evermore for like sitting inside and crafting, which, as you can probably tell, is what I do most of the time. If you're going to recreate this project, I would recommend, if you want it to be a shawl, do stripes that are much wider and not as many rows so that you get more of the big rectangular like blanket shawl look. But if you like the oversized scarf with all the different colors, then make stripes that are almost square in how long they are, and you should get something similar. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you think I should do this with another artist. I'm always looking for new music to listen to, especially now that I am working from home. So if you have any recommendations, just drop them below. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.